Hello guys, this is Prem and welcome to Python Learning Series. In this lecture, we're going to learn about Python loops. In general, statements are executed sequentially, like the first statement in a function is executed first, followed by a second, then third, then fourth, and so on. So there may be a situation when you need to execute a block of code or a block of statements 1,000 times or 2,000 times. It's a humongous effort, right? So what is the solution for that? So the solution is Python loops. A Python loops allow us to execute a statement multiple times. Okay, so in Python programming language, there are two ways to perform loop. First way is while loop, and our next is for loop. Okay, so let's take one by one. Our first is while loop. Okay, so while loop repeats a statement or a group of statement or a group of code while a given condition is true. Okay, and in our another hand we have for loop, which executes a sequence of code or sequence of statements multiple times and abbreviates the code that manages the loop variable. Okay, so let's talk about each and every loop in detail. So our first loop is while loop. So in Python, while loop is used to execute a block of statement repeatedly until a given condition is satisfied or a given condition is true. Okay, so it first tests the condition, and if the condition is true, it executes the block of statement. The moment the condition is false, the control comes out of the loop and the line immediately after the loop is executed. Okay, so first we enter into our while loop, then we have our condition. Okay, and if the condition is true, we have to execute this part of the statement. Okay, and it will go again to our condition and check this is true or false. Okay, if this is true, it will print or it will execute this part of the statement. Okay, and the moment the condition is false, it will exit from while loop. Okay, so I hope you're getting the point of the flowchart. Okay, so let's talk about the syntax. Okay, so syntax is very simple. There are only there are only four things. Okay, first is while. Okay, so while is a keyword expression, so this is our expression followed by a colon. Then we have our statement. Remember, indentation is very important. Okay, so let's understand the concept of while loop by considering an example. So the question says, write a Python program to print the sum of first n numbers. Okay, so let's take a look at the hint. Hint says if n is equal to 5. Okay, if n is equal to 5, then sum should be 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 is equals to 15. Okay, so for that, first we have to capture the value of n, right? So for capturing the value, we have an input command. Okay, and after the input command, we have initialize sum to be 0, right? So what is sum? Sum represents the variable where the computed sum is stored. Okay, and n represents the number of numbers to be added. Okay, so first we enter into a while loop, then we have our condition, while condition, and if the while condition is true, okay, so it will add the values and store in some variable. Okay, and it will check again if the while condition is true or false. If the condition is true, it will add the values and store it in some. Okay, and the moment the while condition is false, it will exit from the while loop and it will print sum. Okay, so in iteration 1, what is the value of n? It's 5, right? So let's take a look at our while condition, which says while n is greater than 0. That means it will perform the while loop until n is greater than 0. The moment n is less than or equal to 0, the condition becomes false. Okay, so what is the value of n? It's 5, right? So is 5 is greater than 0? Yes, it is. So in here we have this statement which says sum is equal to sum plus n. Okay, so sum is equals to, so what is the value of sum? We have initialized the value of sum to 0, right? So sum is equals to 0 plus, so what is the value of n? It's 5, right? So 0 plus 5, which gives us 5. Okay, so the value of sum is updated from 0 to 5. Okay, so in the next iteration, observe that the value of n is 4, right? So that means the value of n is decreasing by 1, right? So for that, for decrementing by 1, we have n is equal to n minus 1. Okay, so the value of n is updated from 5 to 4. Okay, and in iteration 2, what is the value of n? It's 4, right? So in the previous slide we have updated the value of n from 5 to 4, right? So in iteration 2 we have the value of n is 4. Okay, so is 4 is greater than 0? Yes, it is. So the value of sum is updated from 5 to 9. Okay, so 5 plus 4, which gives us 9. So the value of sum is updated from 5 to 9, and the value of n is 3. Okay, so in our iteration 3, is 3 is greater than 0? Yes, it is. So the sum of the n numbers became 12. Okay, and the value of n became 2. Okay, and our in our iteration 4, is 2 is greater than 0? Yes, it is. So the value of sum is 14 and the value of n is 1. Okay, and our next iteration is 1 is greater than 0? Yes, it is. So the value of sum is 15 and the value of n is 0. Okay, so is 0 is greater than 0? No, it's not. Okay, that means our condition is false. Okay, so the moment condition is false, we'll exit from the while loop and it will print sum, which is 15. Okay, so let's take a look at our code. Okay, so this is our syntax. It says, okay, so it says first we have our input command. Okay, so this is our input command. Then we have initialize the value of sum to 0. Then we have the while expression. Okay, and which says n is greater than 0. Okay, and then we have these two statements. Okay, and then we have printed or we have executed the value of sum. Okay, so when you run this program, when we run this whole program, it will give like 15. Okay, so I hope you're getting the point of while loop. So let's explore the same example in Spider. Welcome to Spider. So the question says, write a Python program to print the sum of first n numbers. Okay, so for that, first we have to capture the numbers, right? So for capturing the numbers, I have an input command. I'm just assigning the value of number to n variable. Okay, so I'm just creating n variable. N is equals to int, so number is an integer, and I'm giving an input, and then I have my text, or I have my string. It says enter value of n. Okay, and we have to initialize the value of sum, right? So sum, say s is equals to 0. Okay, so and then we have our while condition. Okay, so while, okay, while, and in here we have our expression which says n is greater than 0. That means it will perform the while loop until n is greater than 0. Okay, and our colon, and remember indentation is very important. Okay, so then we have our statements. So our first statement is s is equals to s plus n. Okay, and our next is n is equals to n minus 1, because we have to, because we have to decrement the value of n by 1, right? So now we will print s. Okay, so when you print or when we run this program, it will ask for the value of n. Let's say the value of n, say 5. Okay, so when we run this program and we hit enter, it will give like 15. Okay, so I'm just running again and let's say 15. Okay, so it will say 120. Okay, so run it again, see 10, so it will see 55. Okay, so let's do further and talk about continue in while loops. With continue statement, we can stop the current iteration and continue with the next iteration. Okay, so let's consider a small example which says write a Python program to print the sum of first 5 numbers, but do not add the number 3 to the sum. Okay, so how do we do that? So for that we have a hint. It says if n is equal to 5, then sum should be 5 plus 4 plus 2 plus 1 is equal to 12. Okay, so for that syntax is, so first we have to capture the number, right? So for capturing the number, I have an input command. I'm assigning the value of the value of number to variable n. Okay, and then I have initialized some variable to 0, and then I have my expression, while expression, which says n is greater than 0, and in here we have an if construct, okay, which says if n is equal to 3, I have n is equal to n minus 1 and continue. Okay, so what does continue means? With continue statement, we can stop the current iteration. That means it will go back to the while expression. Okay, and in here we have these two statements, sum is equal to sum plus n and n is equal to n minus 1 to decrement the value of n by 1. Okay, and then I have sum. Okay, so then I have printed sum. Okay, so when we execute this code, it will give like this. Okay, so 12 is our output. Okay, so 12 is as expected. So let's explore the context of continue in Spider. Welcome to Spider, and I'm just showing you the same question in Spider. Okay, so first we have to capture the number, right? So for capturing the number, I have n is equal to int, number is an integer, then I have an input. It says enter value n. Okay, then I have initialize s to 0. Okay, so then I have while expression, so while n is greater than 0 and or colon. Remember, indentation is very important. Then in here we have an if construct which says if n is equal to 3 and a colon. If n is equal to 3, I have a statement n is equal to n minus 1. Okay, so it's not a control statement, but it's a statement. Okay, and we have continue. Okay, so what is continue? Continue is nothing but it will stop this iteration and goes back to our while condition. Okay, and then I have these two statements like s is equal to s plus n and n is equal to n minus 1 to decrease the value of n by 1. Okay, and when we print s, it will give like, so enter value n, so let's say I have 5, okay, so it will give like 12. Okay, so let's run it again and see what happens now. 10. Okay, so I hope getting the point of continue statements. So let's do further and talk about break statement. Break statement in while loop. So let's consider a small example. It says write a Python program to print the sum of first 5 numbers, but do not add any number on or after the number 3. Okay, so for that, let's take a look at our hint. Hint says if n is equal to 5, then sum should be 5 plus 4, which is 9. Okay, so what is break statement? With break statement, we can stop the execution of the loop after the break point. Okay, so once we have understood the concept of break in while loop, so let's take a look at our syntax for our example. Okay, so the syntax is, first we have to capture the number, right? So for capturing the number, I have an input command. Okay, so I have an input command, then I have initialized the variable sum to 0, and then I have while loop expression, then I have if construct. Okay, and which says if n is equal to 3, break. Okay, that means, remember, indentation is very important, and that means with break statement, the control comes out of the loop. Okay, so after the break statement, control comes out of the loop. Okay, so when we run this whole program, it will give like 9. Okay, so let's go to Spider and do some practical programming. Welcome to Spider, and I'm just showing you the same example. Okay, which says write a Python program to print the sum of first 5 numbers, but do not add, let me just shift it. Okay, so do not add any numbers on or after the number 3. Okay, so how do we do that? So for that, for capturing the number, I have an input command, n is equal to int input, then I have my string which says enter value n. Okay, and then I have initialized s to 0, and then I have while expression which says n is greater than 0. Okay, and and a colon, and remember, indentation is very important. Okay, so if n is equal to 3, if n is equal to 3, we have break. Okay, so with break, after the break, we have s is equal to s plus n, and we have n is equal to n minus 1 to decrement the value of n by 1. Okay, so then we have executed the value of s. Okay, so when we do that, if we give like enter value n, so let's say the value of n is 5, so it will give as 9. Okay, so I'm just running it again and seeing if 15, so it says 114. Okay, so let's do further and talk about our second loop, which is for loop.